everyone to the March Twin Cities Immigration Forum. This Immigration Forum is co-hosted by the City of Minneapolis Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs and the City of St. Paul Immigrant and Refugee Program. Today is March 14th, 2024. And this meeting series is scheduled to address topics of interest and concern to immigrant and refugee residents and individuals and organizations that serve the immigrant and refugee community in the Twin Cities area. This series originated as a way to unpack federal immigration policies, programs, actions, and to share news, and has expanded beyond immigration updates to include discussions on various topics touching Minnesota residents with community as well as government speakers and updates. I've put the agenda for this month's forum in the chat. We will talk about a couple of celebrations this month. We'll talk about legislative updates from the Capitol, from the state legislature, government updates, including city updates from Minneapolis and St. Paul, immigration and related news. And there will be an opportunity for community members to share updates that you may have as well. And if there's time, we will dedicate a little bit of time to extra credit. So welcome. We are glad that you're here today. And just want to take a moment to recognize International Women's Day, which is March 8th, a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. And this month, as National Women's History Month. And if you look online, whether on Wikipedia or other resources, there is a variety of opinion on when International Women's Month or National Women's History Month began to be recognized, but is an opportunity for individuals and communities to recognize the important contributions of women to our society. And we also wanted to just take a moment to recognize the important women in, excuse me, our own lives and our own society. The City of Minneapolis did advance a resolution. We'll put that into the chat. And I wanted to turn it over to Edmundo as well, so that he can share some information regarding Women's History Month.
Thanks, Michelle. Well, Women's History Month is, we are really excited about celebrating it because we have a historic event this past year in 2024 in St. Paul, because our entire city council are all women. We're the only city council in the United States that are all women. You know, I think we in St. Paul do a pretty good job of promoting diversity and equity and inclusion, which actually is the theme of this year's Women's History Month. And you know, I'm also very proud of my office, the city attorney's office. Over 70% of our staff are women. 90% of our management team are women, including the attorney, the city attorney, and our 3 deputies. So I'm very proud of the job that we do in St. Paul in promoting equity and inclusion, and very excited to celebrate our city council and my office. Michelle?
That's wonderful. And, you know, if people want to share influential women in your own lives in the chat, welcome folks to do so. Just can't miss an opportunity to talk about one of the most important women in my life, my mother, who had an incredible influence on who I am as a person and the choices I make in my life every day. So also wanted to recognize that March 21st is the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, and raise awareness about this other United Nations Day of Recognition. And so putting some information in the chat about that international date as well. And with that, Edmundo, I'll turn it over to you to open with legislative updates at the state legislature.
Great, thanks. As all of you know, we're in the midst of a legislative session, so we have a couple of guest speakers here today. And I guess maybe we can start with, let's see, why don't we start with Emilio and Adriana, talk a little bit about the North Star Act. Welcome.
Gracias, buenas tardes Hi, good
Buenas tardes.
afternoon. Buenas tardes. My name is Adriana Cerrillo, and I think Sarai is with us as well, Emilio.
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
here.
she's probably in the meeting. Hello.
Yes. Hi. So it's Sarai, Emilio, and I, so that I don't take that away from Sarai being a woman. My name is Adriana Cerrillo. I'm the lead coordinator for this incredible bill. I came on board to lead this incredible effort March of last year, but this has been on the works for the last 5 years. It was previously led by our incredible Senator Patricia Torres Rey and our Representative Aisha Gomez. Currently is in the Senate is Senator Pate, and in the House is Representative Sandra Feist, that is also an immigration attorney. Pass it on to Sarai, and then you take it on after that, Emilio, so we can, how long do we have, first of all?
Take the time you need.
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. All right. Sarai?
Yes, thank you so much. So my apologies. So I'm with Abby and on the North Star Act Alliance, same with Adriana and Emilio. I work in public policy, and so just to, or I'll let Emilio introduce himself as well, and then I can take it from there if you like.
Sure. My name is Emilio Rodriguez. Us three are on the leadership team of the North Star Alliance. I've been working on this bill since Senator Fate introduced it last year. And yeah, Sarah, back to you.
Yeah, so thank you so much. The reason why we're presenting today, and I know we tried to present last week, but we didn't have as much time. So thank you, Michelle, for having us again. So I just wanted to note, Emilio, if you could drop our one pager in the chat, as well as some key points so people can take a look. That would be great. So we're having a little bit of sense of urgency this legislative session regarding the presidential election that's coming. And so the bill that we're trying to get passed or get some attention towards is what some people are calling a sanctuary state bill. The bill actually has nothing to do with sanctuary states. And so what we're trying to do is get law enforcement on board, just to establish a foundation with this bill to protect our communities, especially with the with the presidential election coming up. We're going to need a lot of protection for our community. And so I know we're trying to pass a lot of bills this session that affect, like the ITIN bill, workers' rights, several other ones. I'm not sure, there's so many, but I feel as though the North Star Act isn't getting as much attention as it should, because what good is it if we pass all of these other bills if our community can't feel safe where they live, if they're in a domestic violence abuse, if a lot of LGBTQ individuals in our community are targeted. And so we just want to make sure that people are actually looking over the over the bill, and really being aware of what this bill also covers with our students that are coming, the trauma that people are facing. And so I just wanted to give a little insight to how this bill can help us a little bit. And then I'll pass it off to Emilio so he can do a little bit of the background.
Thanks. I don't know how to add files to the chat, but I think I can just send afterwards. But right, like Sarai was saying, there's been a number of bills that have been passed. Driver's licenses for all, the Minnesota Care expansion, the North Star Promise, which makes it possible for all Minnesota residents to apply to college for free if they make less than 80K. And like she was saying, much of that won't be as effective if the protections that are in place with this bill aren't implemented. Building healthy relationships with law enforcement and ensuring public safety, not just for our immigrant communities, but for all, is the key focus of the bill. When immigrants feel as though they're safe, they can call for help, not just for themselves, but their friends or neighbors. And there is a lot of urgency right now. In the Senate, we had some pushback from Senator Hochschild. We had a very productive conversation with him, though, and I think if we move in the correct way, we could persuade him to change his vote. But we've not really had much of a sense of urgency from the Senate leadership. Senator Murphy has not, we haven't had the chance to speak with her yet. And in the House, we are waiting to get a hearing in the State and Local Government Committee where Chair Claiborne is supportive of the bill, and yet Speaker Hortman is afraid of giving us a hearing. And in my opinion, I feel as though a lot of the negative press that we've gotten and a lot of the misconceptions that exist around the bill, such as this bill being a sanctuary state or that it'll attract more immigrants to come here, or whatever misconception or notion that may be, I believe that this hearing would be very important, not just for the success of this bill, but for changing the public opinion around it. And so my ask here today, I think last week we got, I shared a link to send to your state representative and to your state senator. But if you have any connections.
I think, I'm so sorry, Emilio. You know, one thing that I think I will suggest for folks is if they're interested in learning more about the bill, I think I would suggest that they reach out directly to you all to learn more. And if they're interested in being supportive, like how they can be supportive. I did put the link to a forum for folks to learn more, the North Star Alliance Interest Forum. And I just saw that you put a link into the chat as well. Can you talk through the information that's on that link for folks so that they have an understanding of how to get more information?
So that website is our main website. We've had it up for a while. If you want to read the bill text, you can go and read it there. If you want to stay updated on any events, any news articles, events at the Capitol, such as the Lobby Day, or providing testimony to any hearing, if we get that. If you want to sign up to volunteer, if you want to just sign up just to learn more, you can go to that website. And yeah, if you have the capacity to reach out to us. We're in need of law enforcement support, reaching out to these key legislators in positions of power, and if we get a hearing, or attending legislator meetings, like getting that manpower is key. So.
Person power.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Emilio, Sarah, or Adriana, maybe you could just quickly outline what the protections in the bill are for people.
Right. So firstly, it prevents state and local law enforcement from cooperating with federal immigration enforcement. That comes in many forms. 287G agreements, where the federal government deputizes police officers to enforce immigration law. Those are ICE detainers, which are a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Those are interrogations, requests for transfer to ICE, stuff like that, that state and local government officials and agencies and whomever would not be allowed to cooperate with. It also prevents state and local agencies and officials from enforcing immigration law on their own. So after driver's licenses was passed, a lot of new drivers will have their driver's license, and while there's a lot of protections that exist here in the cities, in the Twin Cities, a lot of those new drivers might be questioned or interrogated for their documentation status, or for their immigration status or their documentation. That part of the bill prevents against racial profiling. It prevents local law enforcement from using limited state resources to enforce laws that it has no say in. That like we as the state should not really be enforcing laws that we have no say in. That's the federal government's role, and this bill does nothing to prevent the federal government from still enforcing that law. But we're just saying that, like, hey, our resources should be spent enforcing our laws, and the federal government can still do its job. So
Great.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Emilio.
Thank
Add
you.
one more thing, if you don't mind. The data protection. I serve in the Minneapolis Board of Education, and this school board, before we got elected, passed a policy to ensure that we did not share any information with ICE. That's not the case throughout the state of Minnesota. So in my mind, how do we protect the most vulnerable communities, and, to ensure that we protect our children? That is a key issue that is critical and very important as well, because the last thing that we want to have is Donald Trump already said that he's going to be mobilizing local and state resources. So God forbid, right, that we have our children taken away from our schools.
Can I also
And-
ask,
yeah.
just one thing quick, if you could also put the bill number so that people who might be interested in learning more actually have the bill number, House file and Senate file, so that they can follow and track. Thank you.
Yeah, and very briefly, I shared an article. There was a number of articles released a couple of years ago when there was a FOIA request made of the Department of Homeland Security that found that they had, using a 1509 administrative subpoena, it's a federal power, that it's not requiring of any warrant. It's just something that one of the DHS officials can just issue. They were using this administrative subpoena power to ask for very sensitive information from schools and abortion clinics, youth soccer leagues. And so that ties into what Adriana was saying, like Minneapolis schools and schools across the state need to be protected from this kind of federal overreach.
Great. Thank you. And any other questions for Emilio, Adriana, or Sarah about the bill?
If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us.
Great.
I'll put my email.
And Emilio, you talked about some documents. If you want to send those to us, we'll make sure they get sent out with the notes for today's meeting. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Adriana, Emilio, and Sarai.
Next, I think next we'll move on to Julia Decker from the Immigrant Law Center. Give us an update on additional bills that are at the legislature this session. Hi, Julia.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. Really glad to see lots of folks in the meeting today. So I am just going to provide sort of an update on where several other pieces of legislation are at the state legislature, pieces of the legislation that may be of interest to immigrants or refugees and community members. There are a lot of bills in the legislature right now. Not just because they're introduced, though, doesn't mean that they're moving. So I am just going to sort of highlight some of the ones that have either been in the mix for a while or have actually had hearings at this point. So one of these is, and I believe Adriana and or Sara mentioned it, these are ITIN bills. So HF 4155, Senate File 4159, and House File 3843, Senate File 3769. These are both bills which would require acceptance of ITINs for rental applications and utility applications. So this obviously has a benefit to folks who may not have a social security number but do have an ITIN, and would increase those folks' ability to submit those applications. Both of those bills have received hearings in each chamber, in a committee in each chamber, which is a great feat considering that the legislature is not doing nearly as much this session as they did the previous session. And we are a little over a week away from their sort of self-imposed deadlines. So having those bills having had hearings is a really great place for those bills to be in. House File 4045, Senate File 3939 is a bill that would expand access to petitions for post-conviction relief. And this is an issue that has been talked about for a few years now. In sum, what it attempts to do is help folks, particularly with old criminal convictions, who may not have received enough information at the time of their conviction, about what the immigration consequences might be, to petition for what's called post-conviction relief, so taking another look at their conviction many, many years later, particularly if they are now facing potential immigration consequences as a result of that very old conviction. That bill has been introduced. It has not been heard in either chamber yet. House File 2245, Senate File 2258. This is a bill that would create an affordable auto insurance program in Minnesota. Some of you may be very familiar with this, others may not be. Auto insurance rates can differ very, very widely depending on your zip code, but also things such as your credit score and your education level. And even within one zip code, you can have the exact same driving record as your neighbor, but if your credit score is different from your neighbor's credit score, your neighbor may be paying a lot more or a lot less. And we're talking the difference between $600 and $2,000 when it comes to an auto insurance premium. So this is a big deal, obviously, as we think about people who are getting their licenses now under the new law, are now also going to be facing additional costs with auto insurance and trying to make that as affordable as possible. This is a bill that the campaign is really interested in hearing from community members on, so I will put my email in the chat. If there is someone on this call or other folks who have maybe had trouble affording auto insurance, we are interested in hearing from you. Now, as I said, there's a week and a day left until first and second deadlines. So next Friday is what they have said, where, you know, all these bills have to have had action on them, essentially, if we want them to have a chance to survive beyond the deadline. So what we can expect over the next week or so is a lot of action without much notice. So bills may be coming up for hearings very rapidly. There may not be a lot of notice. The calendars can change really quickly. The agendas may not be posted. So organizations like ours, Immigrant Law Center, as well as other organizations that work on these issues, will just be monitoring the calendars, monitoring the agendas very closely, and trying to keep people posted as much as we can about what's happening. It will be very difficult, though. It will be moving very quickly, and there may be some very late night hearings, depending on how many bills the committee chairs want to get through their committees. So very, again, grateful to the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul for providing this space. I will note, we are just on the other side of the 1-year anniversary of the signing of the driver's license for all bill. I would just, so yes, very obviously really wonderful milestone for the community, for our state. One thing just to note, there are ongoing meetings with DVS, between stakeholders and DVS and immigration advocates, engaging around implementation issues, troubleshooting issues that may arise, and just making sure that questions are answered in as smoothly a way as possible. Obviously, we understand that also we are dealing with a state agency that is bringing on a lot of new hires. If you are considering for applying for a driver's license for the first time under the new law, highly encourage folks to check out DVS's website. They have a lot of information about things like educational sessions to attend. Really encourage people to maybe attend a session about learning about the manual, the driver's manual, and what the exam will be like. The test and sort of the questions and the language that's used can sometimes be not intuitive, not the language that maybe we use in everyday conversation. And so it can be really great to get some of that information ahead of time before you go in to take the test. So with that, I will stand for any questions. Again, just thank you everybody for being here, and I will put my email in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Julia. Any questions for Julia on any of the bills she mentioned, or anything else that you might be curious about going on to legislate? Adriana, yes.
Thank you. So good to see you, Julia. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. So if you don't get a hearing in any of these bills, is there like any conversations with leadership supporting these issues in a different manner?
The interesting thing about deadlines is that they are just sort of, they are imposed by the legislature themselves, on themselves. So it's always sort of theoretically possible that they could decide to sort of suspend their own rules and take something up beyond deadline. But the idea is to sort of narrow their focus as they move towards the end of session so that they do not sort of have to continue making those decisions about what bills to hear and whether to do something with them. So I would say it's a little bit harder once deadlines have passed to see something happen at that point. And the other thing I will just note is that they also have a relatively short session this year in general. They started in February. They will be done in, I think it's like mid-May or so. So things are moving pretty rapidly. They also have several different breaks, legislative breaks this session due to different holidays. So that also cuts down on the time that they have to give bills hearings. So effectively, it can become really difficult if a bill is not heard by deadline.
Thank you, Julia.
Great. Thank you, Julia. Any other questions? I do note there was one question for you in the chat. If you would also be willing to share your phone number where people can reach you.
I would say email is probably best for first level. And then if there are more urgent matters, I can sort of individually reach out to people and make sure they have my cell phone number.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Julia. Thank you, everyone who came and talked about the legislative agenda. And with that, I think we'll turn it back to Michelle. Oh, I think we do have another question. I see someone's hand raised. Oh, Rudolfo is here. Hi, Rudolfo. You have a question?
Hey, how are you doing? I'd rather have some comment to add to the bills on the 18th. We are working together, Copal, ACER, and Latino Lead in documenting and supporting this bill. So we are also having and handling a lot of information about it. So if you want to contact either of us, the three agencies, we are going to be really happy on giving you more information. What is the relevance of promoting, impulsing, and supporting this bill goes through deep research behind it. So we do have all the data you might need and arguments that you can use if you are interested in supporting the hearings. Please let us know. This is really important, particularly for communities who cannot have Social Security numbers. So particularly for us is quite important and goes related to say the next step after the great acquisition of license for everyone. So this is the following one. So please support it. And if you have questions also, and with our beloved friends from ILCM, we are here to support this one. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rodolfo. If I might ask, what would the ITIN bills do? What would people be able to use their ITINs to do with these bills?
Yeah, as you know, today at this moment, the Department of Revenue has been opening the tax work, accepting the ITINs even for claiming the child tax credit. However, we do see still some limitations in how to use the ITIN. There are statute, I guess, and that Julia can correct me, but it is a good, use of it to open certain relationships in commercial ways, like renting houses or even opening bank accounts and all that. We've been doing some research, and so many people are not aware that they can accept the ITIN instead of the Social Security number to guarantee the rental for an individual regardless of status. So that is why we are promoting this greatly, because there is a lack of information from people who are offering services and some businesses to people, but they not knowing that they can have this, say, opening for ITIN numbers instead, and they are even losing clients. So both ways are going to be very beneficial. People can rent a house, and the landowner can have a new client to rent their properties. So that is why we are very interested on this one.
Thank you. Any questions for Rodolfo about these bills? Well, thank you very much, everyone. And with that, why don't I turn it back to Michelle?
Yep, and I do see folks posting information into the chat, including media outreach. So I just want people to take note of that. Also, in case you were not aware, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, I know there's a representative from the County Attorney's Office here today, is doing a weekly update on what's going on at the Capitol. So Eder, I know that you were here to talk about another topic, but just wanted to share that as well, because I had the opportunity to watch one of the clips, and it's really fast-paced and very exciting, and a handy way to learn about criminal justice-related initiatives that are at the state legislature this session. So kudos to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. And I know that we have updates to share. City of Minneapolis has some updates, maybe St. Paul as well. But Eder, why don't you kick us off with your update regarding the UNT visa policy for the group?
Thank you, Michelle, and thanks, Edmundo. So we have exciting news from the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, which is that we've revamped our UNT visa policy. We've been doing a lot of work to get it publicized in traditional press, but also partnering with a lot of organizations that do grassroots work with people and interact with the immigrant and refugee community every day. So we have a lot of organizations that really took a leap of faith with us and endorsed our policy and stood with us at a press conference. And just this week, on Tuesday, we had a big event, a big public event specifically, where about 70 to 100 members of the public were there to hear from a really great panel. We had a panel including Gio Valise, who is really blazed the trail for UNT visas here in our state. We had Lenore Miller-Burgedy from ILCM, who has been doing this work since the inception of UNT visas, and representatives from our office, including the county attorney. So I'll publish the video recording of our panel in the chat. And then if you want to learn more about our policy, I'll also post the link to our website, and I'll just spam the chat with as many resources as I can. But if you have any questions on UNT visa policies, or if you would like us to come out and do community engagement with your groups, we're looking for any and all opportunities to spread the word, no matter how big or small your gathering would be. So don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll put all my contact info in the chat.
That's wonderful. And Eder Castillo is an attorney with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and the U Visa certifier, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I guess one other question, perhaps for folks who aren't as familiar with UNT visas generally, and then also for people who are not familiar with this very broad change in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office policy, could you share just a little bit of information to get people up to speed?
Yeah, absolutely. So UNT visas are visas for victims of crime, specifically non-citizen victims of crime. U visas are for 16 specific crimes. Most of them are violent crimes, but there are certain caveats and crimes that you could fit different behavior under. And then T visas are for trafficking victims specifically. And these, essentially the change that we are taking on is removing a lot of the obstacles that we had put on UNT visas. So we had put a whole bunch of obstacles on it, including who we would certify for, how quickly we would do it, when we would certify at the end of a case versus in the middle or at the beginning of a case. So there's a whole bunch of changes, but really the policy is just getting out of the way so that U visas are what they were originally designed to do. So I hate that it's transformative because it's just what it is. It's just going back to step one and how it was originally designed to be. But yeah, and especially if you work with victims or encounter people who have been victimized in our state, you should definitely become more aware of this. And so I'll put all those resources. Otherwise, I could talk for 2 hours about all the little nitty gritty things. But our policy has gotten a lot of attention. We'll actually be going to New York City for a convening of prosecutors to share our policy because they heard about it. So it is a big change, despite the fact that it's just getting out of the way of what UN visas should be.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ed. I really appreciate it, and appreciate you hopping on kind of short notice here today.
Thanks,
I want
Ed.
to turn to I'd like to turn to a couple of a couple of City of Minneapolis related updates. One within the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. There is a job opportunity for a community relations specialist within OIRA Minneapolis. The position closes on March 18th at 11:59 p.m. So I encourage folks to check out the job description, and if you're interested, please do apply. And if you know individuals who might be interested, who would be a good fit, the individual will be working directly with me as the director of the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs within the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department. So more information is in the link, which I've just put in the chat. Another development in City of Minneapolis that I'm excited to share is that the City Council has advanced a legislative directive on displaced persons. And this legislative directive was advanced in February and became finalized on 1st of March, and instructs us as city to prepare an overview of current programs, services, and partnerships available to immigrants in Minneapolis, offered through city, county, and state, to provide an overview on policies, practices, and protocols for city staff who interact with migrant and refugee populations, to share an update on current partnerships the city has that support immigration and refugee residents, and identify current need services or program gaps, as well as potential barriers or challenges in offering services to those in need. So it does feel like a broad directive, trying to compile as much information as possible, and to present the requested information by June 30th of this year. So keep an eye out. There will be additional developments, and at some point a council presentation, at some point before June 30th, the council presentation on this topic. And I'm really eager to take on that work. So those are a couple of updates from City of Minneapolis side. And if there are additional city or other governmental updates that people would like to share at this time, we'll turn it over to whoever would like to take the mic and share.
Michelle, I've got a couple updates from St. Paul.
Go for it.
Okay. First, St. Paul Police Department are asking for the public's help. As most of you probably heard on the news, copper wire theft is an increasing problem in our city and across the Twin Cities. It's very costly to cities. We have to replace copper wiring, but also it is a public safety issue in that we lose lighting around the city, and it makes people more susceptible to criminals and crime. So the police are asking that if you notice anyone that isn't a St. Paul City employee near streetlights or electric vehicle charging stations for an extended period of time, to please call 911 to report the location and provide a description of what you're witnessing and who is involved. Really looking for the public's help to address this problem and hopefully bring a stop to it. The other announcement I'd like to make is that our St. Paul City Labor Standards Advisory Committee, it's a committee of the city in partnership with HERO, Human Rights and Equal Economic Opportunity Department, is working on a wage theft ordinance for the city of St. Paul. We've got a lot of protections for workers in the city, but one of the things that we don't have yet is a wage theft ordinance, and they're working on putting together a wage theft ordinance that would be similar to the state statute on wage theft, and then giving people an additional opportunity to seek protection from the city of St. Paul when they're the victims of a wage theft incident. So more to come in the future. Next month, we'll have someone from HERO on to talk about the ordinance in more detail. So thanks, Michelle. Back.
Super. So any other governmental updates that folks would like to share? We'll keep it open for just a moment and then transition. If there are other governmental updates, please share. And I see somebody that just went on. Okay, maybe not. Lee, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
good evening, everyone. Lee here with the Department of Education. Two quick network meeting announcements. Next Thursday, we have our last Language Access Network meeting. This is a network that brings together various school and district staff who support bilingual programming or bilingual education programming, language access, and yeah, so multilingual education related work that they do in their district. And so we have our last meeting next Thursday, and we follow the school year. And so I'm saying last as in this will be the last for the school year. We'll reconvene again in the fall, but it's next Thursday from 1 to 3. And we will have our featured guest next Thursday is someone who provides she's the founder of Weaving Cultures, which is a local community-based organization that provides a 2-day training for school interpreters in K-12 school settings. And so she will be condensing her 2-day training program into a 50-minute training program for our network members next Thursday. The Commissioner of Education will also be addressing the network just to kind of close it off and say thank you and goodbye for the year. So I will provide the links to that training. And then the following Wednesday, March 27th, is our Refugee Immigrant Education Network. Again, this is a convening of school, district, staff. Both of these are really tailored for educators and school leaders. However, they are open to the public, community members, parents. Everyone is encouraged to attend. But in the Refugee Immigrant Education Network, we're going to be providing really detailed, really specific guidance to schools on how to support recently arrived immigrant children. And so we are prepared to talk about how lighting in the classroom can trigger trauma responses. We're ready to talk about how school buses should be color-coded instead of numbered, how the bell, we've heard directly from parents that sometimes the bell inside a school can sound a lot like the bell that is utilized in like an immigration detention center or even ports of entry into the country. And so, yeah, so that's just an example of something we're going to be providing some guidance on for our school colleagues who are in that meeting. So again, it is welcome. It is open to the public, although the information I would say is really tailored for schools and districts. So yeah, I will follow up with the links in the chat.
That's
Thanks.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Lee. Appreciate it. Any other governmental, quasi-governmental updates? Otherwise, I think we'll move to community updates. Go ahead.
Hey,
Sarah, did you have something you wanted to share?
sorry. Nope, sorry. Nope, I'm good.
Thank you. Any other updates, including from community? If there are any projects, any initiatives, if you're doing any events that you would like to share, now's a moment you can put it in the chat or you can share out loud. And I think if there are no additional updates, then we can move to immigration updates. And Edmundo, maybe we can tag team on this one. The first update that I'd like to share is, I don't know how many folks watched the State of the Union address with President Biden, but worth catching from the standpoint of immigration towards the latter part of his address. There were some relevant comments made on the topic of immigration, so worthwhile to keep that in mind. And so I invite folks to watch. Also, with regard to bills that are at the federal legislature, there is one bill. Actually, there are two bills. One that would make educational experience of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander children visible in student data, and another that would halt deportation of Southeast Asian refugees and protect their right to be with their families. And so we'll put some information about those in the chat. And Edmundo, I don't know if there was an additional, I think that there was a Ukrainian re-parole, and I have the link for that. I don't know if you want me to go through that.
Yeah,
as
go ahead.
well.
Yeah, we have I can quickly update that parole has been extended for Ukrainian nationals who arrived here during the resettlement period a couple of years ago, and the federal government has reestablished extending parole for folks. So there will be an opportunity for people to apply for extensions of their parole. Anything else you want to add on that, Michelle?
No, those are the updates that I am seeing some stuff in the chat, and I'm trying to put some links in there as well. So if there are other items in the chat that people may be interested in sharing out loud, that would be super. Or Edmundo, if you'd like to read it out, that would be cool too.
Sure. Let's see. Okay, Jenny. Okay, that was an update on the Ukrainian parole. State of the Union address, Michelle, I just added. People are interested in seeing that. William, I'm not sure what you have a Minnesota health update. Maybe you can tell us quickly what that's about.
No, I posted this link answering the question about the Minnesota Refugee Network. So these are the links where the network can be found.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I saw someone else had a question about where the refugee network could be found.
Exactly. So these are the links that are accessible right now.
Great, thank you. All right, and that looks like, and then Lee Herb did put in her contact information. So I think that's everything in the chat, Michelle.
Wonderful. Jenny, I see your hands raised. Go ahead.
I was just going to share one more update about the I-765 employment authorization for refugees, that they are now going to process those automatically when refugees enter the country starting after December 10th, 2023. So they'll no longer have to file the application to obtain a work authorization. It'll be processed automatically. So I think that's a very positive change for refugees when they enter the country.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that update too. I'm just going to put a little bit of information in the chat, and I'll see if I can find the link as well. Thank you, Jenny, for that reminder, for that additional immigration update. I think we can transition quick to, if there aren't additional updates, to sort of a forecast for next month. I know one topic that we will be addressing in April is a recent report that was issued by the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis on Mexican immigrants and the workforce of the northern United States. So we'll put the link to that report in the chat, and just know that a representative from the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, Eric Garcia Luna, may be joining us next month to provide additional context with regard to this wonderful report. And maybe we can talk through some of the welcoming spaces. Edmundo, do you want to talk through some of those and some of the extra credit stuff? Sure.
We are still hosting a Welcome Twin Cities meeting on alternate Wednesdays from 4:30 to 5:30. It's a meeting where people can come together and talk about resources and needs of new arrivals to the Twin Cities and how we as a community and as individual organizations may be able to assist and help in meeting those needs. The next meeting, I believe, is next Wednesday.
That's right.
From 4:30 to 5:30. And if anyone is interested in joining that meeting, please email Michelle or I, and we'll send you a link to the meeting series. You want then, or office hours and community, Michelle, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yep. So the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs has been hosting community hours at 777 East Lake Street weekly from 2 to 4 p.m. So that is a great space for community members to be connected to resources, including information about immigration legal service providers and other resources in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities area. So if folks are working with individuals who may benefit from, an actual interaction with someone who can sort of walk them through some of these topics relating to accessing resources, please don't hesitate to suggest that they come over to the Career Force Center, again at 777 East Lake Street in Minneapolis from 2 to 4 p.m. On Wednesdays. I'm putting the OIRA calendar of events, which has our office hours, as well as the links and dates for the Welcoming Twin Cities meeting that Edmundo just talked about.
Great, thank you. And I guess we can talk a little bit about extra credit reading. Something we started a few months ago, putting in some additional readings that people might be interested in. And one of the things we thought might be interesting is Minnesota Home Ownership Center had previously published kind of a workbook toolkit on using ITIN numbers for obtaining mortgages in Minnesota. It's a guide for individuals who hold ITINs for applying for mortgages. So we put that in the chat, given the discussions we had about opportunities for increased use of ITINs for getting leases and other things. We thought it might be of value to also put in some information about how people can use ITINs to obtain a mortgage for a home. Next, we also had an article regarding Beyond the Border Solution. It's a American Immigration Council article on some suggestions for how to handle the border and make it a more not only secure, but also a place where people can continue to come and who are seeking safety and protection from persecution can continue to come and have an opportunity to apply for asylum. So there's some very good suggestions in that article if people would like to take a look at that. We also put in an overview of TPS that the American Immigration Council published a couple of years ago, I believe, but they updated it with information about current TPS opportunities for people from various designated countries. So if people are interested in having a better understanding of TPS, that's a very good resource. Then we put in two editorials, one from the Washington Post about the truth about illegal immigration and crime, because there's been a lot of news lately around crime and immigrants and new arrivals involved in criminal activity, and the Washington Post did a fairly in-depth piece looking at how there's a lot of misinformation around that issue. So it's probably worth a good read. And then also similarly, the Washington Post did an editorial on immigration and the effect immigration has on the positive effect immigration has on the economy and job market, and how, again, misinformation is leading people to believe that it doesn't have a positive effect, but it actually does. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Michelle.
Oh my gosh, and that's a lot of reading. I don't think I'm going to give anybody else any extra credit because that's going to take probably a couple of weeks. So Thank you all very much for joining us today. I think that's it as far as our updates are concerned, or the things that we wanted to share with you. If you have any last thoughts or questions or ideas that you want to share before we wrap today, please do put it in the chat or say it out loud. Otherwise, we'll wrap just a little bit early today. I do want to share that for April, we'll be changing the date of the forum because both Edmundo and I will be at Welcoming Interactive in Dallas, Texas. If folks are not aware of this wonderful opportunity to gather and discuss immigrant and refugee inclusion around the country, invite folks to learn more. And I will put a link to the Welcoming Interactive conference page in the chat so that people can explore more. That is between April 10th and 12th. This year in Dallas, Texas, and will be around the time of solar eclipse, I believe. So I think that there will be a lot of folks heading over to Dallas and all parts south in the United States to catch the best view of the eclipse. Any other updates that people have to share while I am populating the chat with the Welcoming Interactive link? Please do share your updates now.
What is the new date in April for the meeting?
Edmundo, what's the new date in April?
Oh, we're going to work that out because we've got a couple of conflicts that have kind of come up, and we're trying to figure out the date. So as soon as we have that, we will send it out.
It may
via
be
email
the
to everyone.
last week of, it may be the last week of April. So what we'll do is send out an email, with some links and some of the flyers from today's conversation. And once we've hammered out the new date, we will give people advance notice, and we'll also change the invite. So folks who receive the invite directly will have the change date. Sorry, we didn't have that available for you all today.
Thanks.
Thank you too. All right, I think that we can call it a day. Thank you again, everyone, for being with us today. Really appreciate your commitment to this information series and your commitment to our communities here in the Twin Cities area and beyond. And hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you joining us tonight.
Bye, and have safe travels to Texas. Be careful in Texas.
Oh yeah. Don't worry. We speak Texan. Don't worry.
There you go. Bye.
All right. Take care of those.
Yeah, you too.